It's been 15 years since the hybrid era started in Formula One, and since that time we've seen a vast amount of history created out on track. A pivotal component of this hybrid turbo era has been the ERS, or the Energy Recovery System. Ensuring that the ERS is efficient and effective can make or break a team's success out on track. Hello and welcome to episode 3 in this 6-part technical series where we take a closer look at the 5 PETRONAS functional fluids. Today we're looking closer at Tutela ERS fluid. Now, looking at what we've got ahead of us here, a few of us may know about the ERS, but few of us would have seen it in this format. So Hal, can you start by talking us through what's in front of us and how is this utilised out on track?
So what we've got here is a number of the elements of the ERS, which, as you said, the Energy Recovery System. If we look at this first one here, this is the MGUK, motor generator unit for the kinetic energy. And what that's doing is trying to use the waste energy from the car. So in this instance, it's taking waste energy from braking. We've also got the MGUH, the motor generator unit heat, and that's taking the energy from the exhausts, which is otherwise be wasted. We're taking that energy, we're then converting it and storing it so that when the driver wants some extra performance, maybe at the corner exit or maybe when he's trying to overtake somebody, that extra performance is available. Briefly looked at the MGU. What's happening then is we come over to this element here, which is, in my world, the power electronics, but it's actually a CEK and a CEH, the control electronics heat and the control electronics kinetic. It doesn't normally look like this. What the guys have done at Brixworth is effectively blow this up and space things out so you can really see what's in there. It passes on the energy to be stored in this component, which is the ES, the energy store, or perhaps more simply to think of, it's a battery. And what we can see here, again, it doesn't normally look like this. We've cut this away. The cylinders that are the actual battery cells, and then it's got this PCB on top of it, and you can see it's this actual space that gets cooled by the Tutela. What happens is you have the waste energy, it's processed by the control electronics, it's stored in the battery, and then it can do the opposite at the right time.
So Hal, can you walk us through the Energy Recovery System?
I certainly can. As the car disappears and we can see the power unit, let's go into a bit more detail of the actual elements of the ERS system. So first of all, we see the 2 MGUs. Here on the left-hand side of the engine, the MGUK, so that's the kinetic, and right in the centre, right in the middle of the centre V, the MGUH. And in front of this, actually underneath the driver's seat, is the ERS module, which contains most of the other elements of the ERS system. We'll start delving into the power electronics. We see first of all the connections between the power electronics and the motors. We see these 3-phase cables, always orange to highlight that they are high voltage and need to be treated with care. And then that takes the voltage into the power electronics. And what we have here in white are the real parts that do the real heavy lifting. This is the equivalent of the crankshaft in the combustion engine. These are the power modules, and they do the conversion from the 3-phase electricity to the DC that the battery needs.
Salvatore, can you explain the journey that the fluid will be taking around the ERS?
Of course. So the fluid will go into the ERS module, cooling first the DC converters, then it will go down into the battery pack, cooling top cell, bottom cells. Then we'll go up into the power module, then we'll get out through the radiators when the fluid gets cooled, and then it will do everything again.
So as we move on top of these power modules are PCBs. They're the real brain of the system. That's the stuff that controls what's going on, make sure we're scheduling everything at the right time. That white area now that was put in front of that brain, that's a lot of the safety systems. But also in there are some systems that create all the various voltages and powers that the car needs to run, because the whole car, all the electrical system is run out of this battery pack through those converters at the front. And what we'll get to now is where that battery pack actually is. It's right underneath the power electronics. in that big box at the front underneath the driver. And there you can see where those are situated within the power unit, and unfortunately we cloak all of that amazing stuff in a car.
Fascinating to see the inner workings of the ERS and the journey of the tutela fluid. Seeing each component like this, I am fascinated to know then, Salvatore, where does the tutela fluid come into play?
So tutela ERS fluid is specifically designed for cooling the ERS, so for dissipating heat and also guaranteeing that there's no electrical breakdowns.
And talking about electrical, when I'm thinking about electrical components on display and fluid being in contact with that, I'm just thinking sparks flying. So how do we safeguard our drivers and the team working within these components?
Yeah, you need, first of all, extremely low electrical conductivity. So we provide the electric fluid, and those properties of being very low electrical conductivity has to be maintained over time. So not only when the fluid is brand new, fresh, but also during its utilization.
And just as these components all work together, as does the partnership between PETRONAS and Mercedes-AMG. So how do you work together to then develop the fluid for this component?
We want to guarantee thermal efficiency, high standards of thermal efficiency, so we can achieve that with low viscosity fluids.
One of the things about the battery is that we actually need to keep the temperature of it quite closely in quite a small band. The reason we do that is to make sure that we've got the efficiency of the battery. We need the battery to be working at its most efficient to be able to provide the performance exactly when the driver needs it. So having that partnership that we have to make sure that the fluid is able to keep it that way is absolutely critical.
So PETRONAS tutela ERS fluid, not only responsible for cooling the ERS system, but also to help with the efficiency of the whole entire system, making sure that we have that effective deployment of energy exactly when needed. Join us for episode 4, when we take a closer look at the gearbox.